Hello friends, welcome back to Locally Raised. If this is your first video here, my name is Marta and I want to share with you today why my husband and I have decided to embark on this homesteading journey. We've been at our property for a couple months now. We moved into my childhood home in June and we moved here planning a change of pace and a change of life, and especially a focus on growing and raising more of our own food. So, let me tell you why we've decided to do that. There are a lot of reasons we could discuss for growing and raising your own food, and my reasons aren't always the same as John's. I asked him what his top 5 reasons would be, and I was interested to learn that our top 5 list did not align. So I want to tell you today the 5 reasons that are dearest to my heart that I have decided to grow and raise more food in our own backyard. Reason number one that I've decided to homestead is a concern for food quality. I want to give higher quality food to my own body and to my family's bodies. Specifically, I want food that's more nutritious and more flavorful. I recently started reading in the past year a little bit more about the food that comes from the grocery store, commercially raised fruits, vegetables, and grains. And I was surprised to learn that the nutritional value of our food has been steadily declining for the last 70 years. There are multiple scientific studies documenting this steady decline in the nutritional value of our food. And I can link an article on that below. There's a really good article from National Geographic that explains this in much greater detail. But in short, for a couple of reasons, some of which is deteriorating soil quality, we are not getting the same things from our food that we used to. So when I eat a grocery store apple, I am not getting the same nutrition that my grandma might have gotten when she ate a grocery store apple. And that kind of concerned me and just made me really excited about possibly taking hold of something better. And the same goes for meats. If the fruits and vegetables and grains that are going to the grocery store are not as nutritionally dense as they once were, that means the meat is also not as nutritionally dense because most of our commercially raised animals are eating grain. And so they're not getting the same things from the grain that they eat, which means the meat they provide is not of the same quality that it was 70 years ago. If I can grow some of my own food, I can make sure that that food has rich soil to grow in. That's one of the reasons I'm partial to raised beds, because your produce can only be as rich as the soil it's grown in. And so if I can control the quality of that soil, then I can help control some of the nutrients that go into my family's food. And that's really encouraging and motivating for me. In addition to being interested in just making sure that we get more nutritionally dense food, I want flavorful food. I don't want my food to just nourish me. I want it to be a pleasure to eat. I love eating. I am passionate about eating. I am somebody who generally doesn't have any trouble remembering when it's mealtime. And so I want to eat food that's absolutely delicious. And I've found that often the food I can grow at home is a little more flavor dense or flavor rich than the food that I can buy at a grocery store. This varies from one crop or one vegetable and fruit to the next. But for example, some of the foods I've noticed this most with are tomatoes. I just have never been able to buy a tomato at the grocery store that tastes like an heirloom tomato that I've ripened on the vine in my backyard. There is a complexity and a richness and a brightness and a fullness to the flavor of those homegrown tomatoes that just can't be mimicked with commercial growing practices. The other food I really noticed this with is strawberries. If you have not had a homegrown strawberry, I encourage you to find a place where you can get some, because I've not bought any at the grocery store that have tasted like homegrown. And there's just, again, a richness. Oops, sorry, B. There's a richness and there's a flavor burst in a homegrown strawberry you don't get from commercially grown food. And so I really am excited about getting delicious and nutritionally dense food for myself and for my family. Reason number two that I want to homestead is because I can get greater food variety if I get to pick what I grow in my backyard and what I raise in my backyard. For example, if I go to a standard grocery store, I might be able to find three types of tomatoes. Maybe a slicing tomato, some kind of Roma paste tomato, and some grape tomatoes. I have 7 or 8 varieties of tomatoes in my garden right now, and some of them are flavors I would never have gotten to taste if I didn't grow them, because you just don't find that kind of variety at the grocery store. And the same is true for foods that tend to just not be stocked at the grocery store. For example, I like figs. Yes, if I lived near a high-end grocery store like Whole Foods or World Market, I'd probably be able to get figs sometimes. But I don't. And I'm growing figs in my garden right now. I've got a little fig tree that's got some small fruit on it. I really hope it yields and ripens. But regardless, I can grow that thing that I want to eat that's not easy to find around here. And that's really satisfying to me that I can tailor my garden space to my particular tastes and that I can experience foods and flavors that I might not otherwise experience if I were reliant on the commercial growing system exclusively. Reason number three that I want to homestead is because I want to give this heritage to my kids. I want them to know where food comes from. And I want them to experience the joy and the groundedness that comes with having tended their own food. My kids are pretty young right now. They're 4 and 2, but already they're becoming really accustomed to spending time out in the garden with me, and they're learning to harvest things. My daughter knows when a tomato is ripe and when a green bean is long enough to pick. And I love that. And she gets so much joy out of picking things and eating them. She eats things that she wouldn't eat if I had just placed it on her plate because she's gotten to help grow it and harvest it. Same for my son. He's just 2 years old, but he will pluck a snacking tomato off of my lunchbox mixed tomato plant and chomp down on it. And that is so satisfying to me to see. I want my kids to not just know where food comes from, but to know how to grow and raise their own in case that's something they want to do someday. It's completely fine if they decide that they want to live in New York City and just buy their food at the grocery store someday. But I want them to have options. And I love knowing that they might know how to grow food, that they might know how to feed chickens, that they might know how to can food, and that I got to give that sort of fullness and richness of life to them. Reason number four that I've chosen to homestead, there's an economy of resources in this lifestyle that's really appealing to me. Right now, we are certainly not saving money by getting started on this little homesteading journey. So far, all that we have is a garden and some bees, but we've already spent money on those things, and we plan to expand and include rabbits and, like I said, possibly sheep and chickens. And we need to build out a compost bin, a composting system, and all of the infrastructure that it takes to get this started costs money. But I know there will come a day when this infrastructure and this investment we're making starts to yield some returns and we start to save money on our food. I know that, for $35, I can buy an apple tree, and that apple tree can give my family apples for 20 years. That's really satisfying to me. And so I'm looking forward to a day where our land starts to kind of pay us back. um, and that sounds more calculating than I mean for it to sound. I want to yield as we're sowing in. And this isn't just a financial interest for me. That's part of it. But when I say economy of resources, I mean that we're building systems that will feed themselves and will include less waste than we have right now. And I'm really drawn to that as well. So, for example, rabbit manure is excellent fertilizer. Unlike chicken and cow manure, it doesn't even need to be composted. It's not hot. It can go right onto the garden and it's nutrient rich. So I plan to gather the manure from our rabbits once we have them, and that's going to fertilize my garden. It's really satisfying to me to think of sort of building out a little ecosystem on our property where things take care of each other and we waste less and we use what we have as well as we can. Finally, for me, reason number 5 that I'm choosing to homestead is the pure joy and satisfaction of the thing. I like this lifestyle so far. As I said, we're just getting started, so there's a lot that I haven't done yet. But as of right now, it is just a joy to me to be growing things and canning things. I lose track of time when I open up my ball canning book before bed and try to decide how to use the peaches that I just picked. I really wake up excited when I know that I'm going to be able to check on how my head of broccoli has grown from last night's rain. So that's just inherently gratifying to me. And this is a lifestyle I think that's enough work that I wouldn't want to do it if I didn't genuinely enjoy it. There is joy and satisfaction. Of course, there have been times where it's also required discipline. I got sick of tomatoes this year. My plants produced more than I felt like processing. And there were times where I had to push through so that those tomatoes didn't go to waste. But every joyful thing requires discipline at times. There's going to be moments where you don't feel like doing it. On the whole, I would say that I just love this. And that makes it completely worth doing, in addition to the fact that it's giving my family this great nutrition and this flavor and this variety and this um, heritage. I know there are many reasons a person could choose to homestead that I haven't named. I've chosen the 5 that are nearest to my heart. There are many others I could discuss. I could talk about the sustainability of this lifestyle a bit more, how our environmental impact is being reduced. I could talk about self sufficiency, how I don't have to worry if the grocery store shelves are a little bit bare because I know that my pantry is full and I know that I know how to produce more food. All these things are legitimate reasons, but I've given you the things that are nearest and dearest to me. Thanks so much for listening today and for allowing me to share with you. Please leave a message in the comment if you're someone who's growing and raising your own food. Tell me about why you've chosen to do that. Or if you haven't grown and raised your own food and I've said something today that resonates with you, let me know what that is. I'm really curious to learn about everybody else's responses to these ideas and to start the conversation. Please be sure to like and subscribe. I really want to keep bringing you videos, and subscriptions help me to do that. So I will see you next week. Until then.